In wildlife protection, we work in areas where, as you call, animal welfare, which is the proper taking care of animals. We have 4 departments: animals in the wild, animals in farming, animals in disasters. As you know, when a disaster happens, it's not only the human beings affected. And many times when a disaster happens, the first source of nutrition or income for community is usually the animals, even before agriculture or crop needs come back. So it's very vital to remember animals in disasters. Then the 4th one is my area, which is animals in communities, which mostly deals with animals that live in close commune with human beings, like pets and things like donkeys. Rabies is a virus from the family of Lassa viruses. There are various variants of rabies. There is the dog rabies, and then we have the bat rabies. But the one that is most predominant, the one that affects human beings, is the dog rabies, which is within dogs. Rabies, in fact, is one of the oldest diseases recorded in the world. As far back as 2300 BC, it has been recorded. And it was also known, and by that time it was known that dogs pass it on. In fact, in the Sumerian script, it was like anybody's dog that has caused the death of a person, that family will be punished. So now, over time in history, we have seen also various scripts, like you can see in the Quran, where the Prophet wrote about what happens if a dog with a wet nose touches you, the steps to take. Many of us did not know where we came, and when we worked in Zanzibar and we talked to them, because Zanzibar is 99% Muslim, and that's a hurdle they had to jump to get people to start with their dogs. They did a study with the imams and actually found out that teaching was derived, because at that time in the Middle East, there was rabies, and people knew if a dog that was salivating, a wet dog, bit you, then you'd get it. So it was more like public health teachings on what to do. So you can see how this is a disease that is entrenched itself within history a long time.
It's a very common disease in Kenya, not as common as other diseases like malaria and all that, but it's, we'd say it's endemic because it's found everywhere in Kenya. So we know that the disease, up to 99%, almost all the rabies that we get in humans is from dogs. But other animals can also transmit the disease, which include cats, some wildlife, and all that. But almost all the rabies that we get in Kenya in humans is from dogs. And then up to 40% of the disease occurs in children, that is under 14 years of age. And this is because this is the age group where children like playing with dogs, or sometimes take care of dogs, or go out with dogs. And often when they get bitten by dogs, they may not report to their parents for fear, I think, of retribution or something. So that allows the disease, I think, to sometimes affect this age group because of that. And then also so rabies itself is a disease that you get it when you're bitten by a dog which has rabies. So this bite can be provoked, means you are the one who, yes, the one who provoked the animal, or most of the time it's unprovoked bite. So it means you were just walking on your way to work, or on your way home, and then a dog came from nowhere and bit you. So oftentimes that is the kind of bites we worry about. When you're bitten by a dog that you did not irritate, it's very unprovoked. So in the dog, the disease normally affects the brain, but the virus quickly goes to the salivary glands. So actually the disease now is in saliva. So when a dog bites you, so the saliva is where the virus is, and now it can be transmitted. So the dog can bite you, it can scratch you, because sometimes you don't have to be bitten visibly to see. A scratch can also be enough. Sometimes scratches also can occur from cats. Cats are very good at scratching. So much as we say cats are not very common transmitters of the disease, they still do, and they've been proven to do it. So it's still a big worry. So, and then also from a dog can leak open wounds, or we call mucosal membranes. Like, for example, the lips, the eyes. So if you get a leak from a dog on those areas, which is unexpected, but if it happens, or an open wound somewhere, that also can, because it's the saliva that can pass the virus. So when you're bitten by a dog, it means the virus stays there at the site of bite, but will attach the nerve endings. So this virus goes through the nerves, not the blood, like many other diseases that we know of. So just through the nerves. So the nerves the virus will move from the site of bite progressively from the periphery all the way to the brain. The brain is where now almost all the symptoms, all we see is because of the action of the brain. So it will take a while, this whole process. And the virus actually stays at the site of bite for a while, giving us time actually to intervene, I suspect. And that's why even we give vaccines for a while, for a period after the bite, and the person still does not get the disease because of that action. That the virus takes a while, stays for a while at the site of bite, and then moves slowly and progressively all the way to the brain. So this whole process can take 3 weeks to 3 months, or even a year, or even more in humans. And this depends on the site of bite. So on several factors will depend on this. So because the disease manifests when the virus reaches the brain, it means when you're bitten far away from the brain, it takes longer to get to the brain. If you're bitten, if the bite is deep, it means there's more saliva that has gotten into the bite. So it means there's more likelihood that the virus will go up. If you have multiple bites, that's also a big risk. And then also the dog may have a lot of virus in the saliva. So the wound may be small, but the saliva has a lot of virus in it. So it's like the viral load in the saliva. So that's a lot. So that matters also. And then the site of bite, when you're bitten closer to the head and neck, so it means the distance between that bite site to the brain is very short. And therefore, things may manifest much quickly. And then also there are some places like the tips of where the innervation, where there are more nerves, like the tips of fingers and all that. So if you're bitten on the face, on the neck, close to the mouth, those are really worrying kind of bites because they're so close to the brain. And therefore you will likely, if nothing's done, you will likely get the disease if no intervention is taken. This whole process of the virus moving from the site of bite to the brain can take quite a while. But now, once now the disease shows its symptoms, so initially the symptoms are nonspecific. It can start with just pain at the site of bite, some little pain there, or you can just have flu-like symptoms, fever, headache, sore throat, just normal. But that quickly progresses now to bigger symptoms. And so at this point, we have two types of rabies that manifest in humans. We have the one that's called furious form. That's what most people know. So up to 70 to 80% of people present that way, the hyperexcitability phase. That's what people know. People say, oh, somebody's barking like a dog because of rabies. Yeah, people fear water, they fear a lot of air. They get confused, some convulse. So that is the hyperexcitability form, which is common. 70 to 80% of people go through that phase, and they will die. I think if you start showing symptoms from rabies, you will definitely die. So that's the sad part about this disease. If you get to show symptoms, you will definitely die. The second phase is called paralytic form or dumb form. Now, this is what confuses most people because it will not show the phases people are used to, the excitable form. This one, somebody just has muscle weakness, specifically from the site, on the site where they were bitten, and they can go progressive paralysis. So they go into coma and they die. Now, when that happens, this is up to 30% of the cases that go through this. When this happens, a lot of people do not know that this could be rabies, especially when the person does not have a history of a bite or does not say, I got bitten by a dog. Because it can look like any other thing that makes you go into coma or lose consciousness. And it may not look like rabies. And we miss a lot of these cases. in the system, because a few people can note that this is a problem. So that happens. It takes a bit longer for the paralytic phase to kill you, but within 2 weeks after developing symptoms, all the rabies cases will likely die. It means once you develop symptoms for rabies, there's no treatment, there's no cure. There's been experimental treatments that have been tried in the Western world, but not in Africa or in Kenya. So in Kenya, it's a one-way route. When you develop symptoms, you will definitely die. So actually, we say rabies is 100% preventable, but 100% fatal. Yeah, so you can prevent it completely, but if you get it, then you will die. And the disconnect here is you get bitten today, the symptoms come in 3 months. So oftentimes, the person cannot connect the disease and the bite. So even when the doctor is asking you questions, you don't connect what you're having today and the bite that you got 3 months ago.
And so this disease has been recorded in medical history a long time. And finally, Louis Pasteur, whom the World Rabies Day dedicates the day he died, finally actually discovered a vaccine. That's because he used to work in farm country, and rabies used to kill a lot of livestock and also children and people. So during his experiments, he was like, there has to be a cure for this thing. And so that day has been dedicated for celebrating World Rabies Day. At this point in time, globally, the world has decided to end rabies by 2030, at least 8 in human beings, and then after that to complete it in dogs. As you've seen in the Northern Americas and in Western Europe, they have gotten rid of rabies in dogs. Latin America, they have now gotten rid of it. Now they're just at their final stages for the few pockets of where you find dog rabies. So now it's a time for Africa, Middle East, and Asia Pacific to push it, because this is one of the diseases where the understanding of the disease, the cure, and the treatment methodology and preventive methodologies have been there, but nothing has been done with it. And that's why it's called a neglected tropical disease, because it's classified in those cases of a disease of poverty, or a disease of the poor. So it is something that has always been hidden at the back. But it's high time in the world that it is a disease that we should get rid of. It should even be easier to get rid of than even polio with the way it is. So now the question is not when, the question is why. Almost up to 2,000 people have died of rabies. And this is not the official number. They were the official who were recorded hospital-wise died of rabies. But they had to go back, and then they did studies on other diseases that were put as non-defined mental or cerebral diseases. And during back tracing and back historying, they actually found that these were actually cases of rabies that were misidentified. So that's a problem, is that in Africa, the rabies setting is that if you don't go to hospital, many a times, and if wananchi do not know that it's rabies, or people do not have the history that the person was bitten by a dog, you may think it's cerebral malaria, meningitis. If you're far, people think it's witchcraft, because not only in Kenya, but many places in Africa, many cases are mistaken because it's witchcraft. And then because of the expense to cure it, many people do not actually even reach the hospital. They're just kept until they die. So the problem may actually be bigger and wider, not only in Kenya, but on the Africa scale than we actually know.
So when you're bitten by a dog, you have to seek immediate intervention. The first thing you need to do is wash the wound with soap and water, soap and running water for up to 15 minutes. Why are we doing this? We are doing this to flush the virus.
Any soap?
Yes, any normal bar soap, you can use that, as long as it's not irritating the wound. The reason we do this is to flush. As I said, the virus is in saliva. The saliva is just deposited in the wound. So basically washing, physically, just mechanically removing the virus from the wound. If you do that, that is very good. In some parts of the world, before they could get the vaccine, they used to do that alone, just washing the wound. And many more people actually did not get the disease just from doing that alone. Of course, we're not saying this is sufficient, but that contributes a lot to removing the virus. The next important thing is going to the hospital or health facility. So you have to visit the health facility, because that's where we have the qualified personnel to handle that. So depending on the size of the bite, if we have big bites or multiple bites or bites closer to the neck, we have something called immunoglobulins. Immunoglobulins, which are like toxins. We inject directly to the wound to kill the virus within the wound itself. And then last but not the least, what we all know is the vaccine. Now the vaccine, you get the vaccine. I think now we still give 5 doses of the vaccine on the day you go to the hospital, and then in subsequent times until day 28 or 30, you get that vaccine. So all these interventions work to stop the virus and kill it, and so that it does not ascend all the way to your brain. And this works. This actually works. It has been proven to work. And all the people who get, almost 100% of those who get the vaccine don't develop symptoms and don't die. So the challenge is now when you ignore a dog bite, or sometimes the problem is we think the dog bit you by accident. You don't think it was infected because you know the dog. Sometimes it's a home dog, so you know it. You're like, no, it can't be. But sometimes the dog can disappear and go to the neighbors and get bitten by another dog. So that can happen. And sometimes also a neighbor can tell you that my dog was vaccinated, but you cannot prove that he was actually vaccinated. And sometimes, while this is not common, but sometimes even the vaccine has to work. You understand? The reason, like you see, like even in health here, we give lots of vaccination to children, many more times than once. Why do we do that? Because every time you give it, there's a section of people, maybe it may not work efficiently, so we give the next time, we give the next time. So even rabies vaccine, we need to give it annually to the dogs. So oftentimes that does not happen, and therefore, so it means while in Kenya today, if you get bitten by a dog, you have to wash the wound and go to hospital. At the hospital, they will assess you and determine whether you need to be given the vaccine or not. You cannot self-treat yourself. So basically, there are simple ways to prevent rabies. When you get bitten by a dog, seek immediate intervention. Wash the wound appropriately, get vaccinations at a hospital or a health facility of your choice. But then again, we know rabies is from the dogs. So prevention of rabies in humans is actually elimination of the disease in dogs. So that means we must vaccinate the dogs. So we do this through mass dog vaccination. So this is sustained vaccination, like the way we do for polio. So like a whole region, we vaccinate all the dogs that are there. Each year we do that. And then we need to reduce the dog population. Just like we do family planning in humans, we have so many dogs that we don't need. That's why they are not taken care of. You find them roaming about. So we need to find a way to reduce the dog population to a level where the dogs we have are the ones we need, and therefore we take care of them. Because all these dogs that are not being taken care of, they're not vaccinated, and therefore they roam about. They are likely the ones to bite people. But importantly, is something we call responsible dog ownership. This is a concept now that's very important, that we need to care for our dogs, that the dogs we have, we need to take care of them. And part of showing love to dogs is vaccinating them. And a lot of Kenyans are not doing that. And this is important that we do to prevent this. The other thing I wanted to mention is we worry about humans getting rabies. But rabies, in many places that I've been to, like in Bomet and Nandi, one of the problems is dogs, rabid dogs, don't just bite humans. They bite animals, other animals. So they bite other dogs, they bite dairy animals, they bite horses, they bite donkeys. So a rabid dog one of the things that they will do is they'll bite animals along its path. And we've seen in places where a dairy animal dies from rabies. So you see, no human has died, but livestock worth hundreds of thousands is dead because of rabies. So rabies has more economic impact to communities than just human death, which we worry about, or dog death. So it can, in a high production area where people keep, zero grazed animals, they can't move. So a dog can actually come and bite all animals in your area. if it's rabid, and cause you a lot of pain and suffering, because all those animals can die. And we don't have very good treatments for animals, unfortunately.
What I advise people is to get their dogs vaccinated. And your dog, since it's endemic and you never know where your dog could get it from, because yes, dogs carry it, but a mongoose or a cat that has been bitten and infected can jump over your fence. So even you who live in a gated community, if you have trees and you have whatever, that doesn't stop a wildlife that has been infected or a cat that's been infected jumping over into your compound and biting your dog. So it's the same for the dog that lives in a gated community to the dog that runs free and wild with the cattle in Narok with the Maasai, is that vaccinate your dog yearly. Until the day Kenya is declared rabies free, vaccinate your dog yearly. And depending where you are in the country, county governments can, if they want, can give it for as less between 100 to 200 shillings per dog. The prices go up as you come to urban centers, because if you come to urban centers, you may pay about 3,000 shillings for your dog, but that comes because of economics. If you're in Nairobi County, you'd be paying about 2,000 for vaccination and then your dog being registered. So it comes in that. But the prevention is better than cure, because if a dog comes down with symptoms, as you said, once a human being, a dog or a cow comes down with symptoms, you're dying. At that point, you're dead. So for human beings, what we say is once you've been bitten by a dog, and let me first say, not all dog bites are rabid dog bites. In fact, majority of dog bites is because you teased the dog, or you made the dog angry, or you pushed the dog to a corner, or the cat and it bit you. So now, if you've been bitten by a dog, whether it's an open wound or a closed wound, because sometimes you get wounds that you do not see, but your skin is open, so the virus will actually penetrate it. Do the first aid, which is wash your hand with running water and soap for at least 10 minutes. Within 48 hours, please make it to a health center or clinic center and report and kindly say that you've been bitten by a dog. And this is where we tell parents, because I had a true African mother, you're told do not play around with a dog and then the dog bites you. You're not coming to tell her that the dog bit you because you know what's going to happen. So it's also to encourage children to be able to be free to report, because many children end up dying because they're too scared to report on what will happen. Then you make sure you go through your 5 rounds of treatment. And then this is where I say the joke comes in, is that in Kenya, the cheapest vaccination, I think, outside the universal healthcare, because in some counties, with universal healthcare like Makueni, you'll get your rabies vaccines free. And you need to take 5 of them. But outside the universal care, it will go between 1,500 to 4,000 shillings an injection. Okay. And you need 5 of them. So can you afford that 7,500 to 15,000 to treat one person, and you don't know if that dog will have bitten you and several people in your household, or your dog will have gone out there and bitten 4 or 5 people? Because according to the law in the penal codes, if it's your dog and it bit and can be proved that it's yours, you're the one who's liable to cover that cost. So the question is, to us as Kenyans, would you rather pay, let's say an average of 500 shillings to vaccinate your dog once a year, or are you happy to cover the cost of 10,000 shillings for every person your dog bites?
But does that also mean that other county governments are failing?
I wouldn't say other county governments are failing, because these are county governments we've worked with. So for the other county governments, I do not know what they have within their systems, because we haven't worked with them. But I do know that county governments, at least almost 10 of them, had started their processes. As I said, unfortunately, because of COVID this year, they have had to concentrate on that. So they're picking up and they're going up. Apart from that is that even government and hospitals, they go with what wananchi demand. So on our point as wananchi and civil society, we have to also bring the awareness to our county governments that we want this.
There's a Rabies Act, which is quite comprehensive, actually. All these things I'm mentioning about taking care of dogs, they are all there. So it's more of enforcement. So we have to enforce this. We have to enforce these things, especially at the local level, whether it's county level, municipality level. There has to be enforcement, where people who keep dogs are responsible for their dogs. But rabies is actually a public good. It's a public good, meaning even us as government, we have to do more to protect the people. That's what public good means, meaning we have to try our best to make sure that the vaccine is subsidized for the people. because as long as the charges are the way they are, because we know that like for the humans, to vaccinate a human, it may take you up to 1,000 shillings or more per dose. So if you talk about 5 doses, then that's 5,000 per person, especially in private facilities. In public facilities, often it's subsidized and it's quite affordable. But in private facilities, that's a big challenge.
Kenya in 2014 were able to do their national strategy for rabies elimination. From that point, from 2015 to 2019, they had 2 pilots running. One from the Makueni County, which was supported by Wildlife Protection, and one in CIL that was supported by the Zoonotic Disease Unit, which is the One Health unit in Kenya, we support from the OIE. That is because such a process to deliver this elimination being brought together in the new One Health concept where animal, environment, and health sectors have to work together with partners was new. So now, from that point, as I said, that happened between 2015 and 2019. So logically this year, and in fact there was when initial meeting was held, was supposed to scale it up because other counties were supposed to come in to see from what had happened now to see if they can. But as you know what happened in 2019, COVID set in. So now at least Kenya, we're on the way ahead and we're going. So the only challenges we're facing, as I would say, is more financial input put on it. Yes, because us as NGO, private sector can only bring so much. So we need the governments to come in and also put in a kitty. Apart from that, we need the county governments, the national governments now to push the agenda. Because from this side outside, you can only do so much. Because we need like regulations and laws on how people should take care of their animals. If not, what is going to happen? Because not only Kenyans, but basically human beings, we're stubborn. If there's nothing to check us when you do something wrong, we will never do the right thing. So it's also now coming in together and the various sectors working, education and awareness. Yeah, we need to have the public and private coming together to see how we can drive this process. And I think once that is met, we will be able to move forward because this is something that the government cannot do alone and the private sector cannot do alone. And it's something that has to come together and we have to get community and wananchi to work with us because that dog lives, even if you go to in the Maasai village, that dog, he may be a guard dog, but you find there's one small boy that he's closest to, which shows that even in the traditional setting, even if the animal is a work dog, it's still a member of the household.
The rallying call is, let's vaccinate. Actually, this year, the theme is vaccinate. Vaccinate. In Kenya, mostly we don't vaccinate a lot of our dogs for reasons beyond some of our understanding. But vaccination of dogs is everything. It's what will stop the disease from getting from the dogs to the humans, and from the dog to livestock, dog to other animals. We don't want all that to happen. So we need to vaccinate the dogs at all. And of course, when you get bitten by a dog, do not ignore. Do not ignore. You have to seek help. You have to seek help. So even if nothing happens, just go to the health facility. Most qualified health personnel know what to do. So we have guidelines out there that tell them what to do. So you need to seek help when you get bitten by a dog. Any bite, it doesn't matter whether you know the dog, you don't know the dog, whether you provoke the dog, you did not provoke the dog. Any bite that you get, you need to seek help at a health facility.